His mother described my job as essentially glorified babysitting with a lesson plan. I was already sitting at the wrong table, not metaphorically, literally. Round table near the back corridor of the Whitmore room, the private dining space his family had reserved for his father's 60th birthday. My table had a small arrangement of white carnations in a bud vase. The 6 tables near the windows had low orchid centerpieces and gold-edged place cards with each guest's name in calligraphy. My card was typed. I had noticed that the moment we arrived. I want to explain something first, because context matters here. I did not walk into that evening naive. I had been with Jake for almost 2 years, and I had spent most of those 2 years assembling a clear picture of what his family thought of me. Not from anything they said directly. From the pauses. From the way his mother would redirect conversations away from my work. From the way his father would nod at whatever I said with the specific, courteous blankness of a man who has decided in advance that nothing coming from that direction will be worth retaining. I teach 3rd grade at Millhaven Elementary, a Title I school in a rural district about 40 minutes outside the city. 30% of my students qualify for free or reduced lunch. Several of them come in Monday mornings, quieter than they were on Friday, and I have learned to read the difference between tired and something heavier. I make $54,000 a year. I have a master's degree in elementary education and a reading specialist certification I completed on nights and weekends while working full-time. I have had students who arrived in August not knowing the sound the letter B makes and left in June reading chapter books. I have also had students who arrived in August not knowing the sound the letter B makes and left in June, still struggling. And I have learned that my job is to stay in the room regardless of which direction things go. His family builds things of a different kind. His father started a commercial real estate development firm 30 years ago. His mother sits on the boards of 2 hospitals and a private arts foundation. His older sister is a corporate attorney with a client list she mentions by sector at dinner parties. The family home has a hallway lined with framed photographs, groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, charity galas with politicians in the background. Jake is not on that wall. I noticed that on my first visit and did not say anything. Jake's official occupation, the one he stated on forms and in introductions, was custom furniture maker. He had a workshop space on a converted property outside town, a place that smelled like cedar and linseed oil and had sawdust permanently worked into the floorboards. He made tables and bookshelves and, occasionally, pieces for local restaurants. He was genuinely good at it. His hands were always slightly rough in a way I had come to associate with someone who actually uses them. His family called it a phase. His mother used the word hobby once in front of me with careful precision, the way you use a word when you want someone to hear it land. His father referred to it as Jake's workshop situation. His sister once asked me, at a holiday dinner I had been expressly invited to, whether I thought he would eventually come back to something real. I said, I thought what he was doing seemed real enough to me. She smiled the way people smile when they think you've missed the point entirely. What I did not know, what I had pieces of but had not assembled into a complete picture, was that Jake was not quite what he appeared. I had noticed things. A phone call he took in the driveway that lasted 45 minutes, his voice measured and deliberate, the tone of someone chairing a meeting rather than making plans. A document on his kitchen table one evening, dense with columns and district codes, something about a rural learning partnership agreement, renewal of terms. A line in an email I'd glimpsed accidentally when he handed me his phone to look up directions. Foundation board vote before end of fiscal year. Unanimous preferred. I asked about it once, casual, not wanting to press. He said it was an old project, a little complicated to explain, nothing that affected day to day. I let it go. I had learned with Jake that the things that mattered most about him tended to show up in the way he listened rather than in what he disclosed. He saw clearly. That was not common. His father's 60th birthday party had been planned for months. The Whitmore room held about 70 guests. His mother had managed the details with the thoroughness she brought to everything, a string ensemble for the first hour, a multi-course dinner, a seating arrangement she had personally reviewed. I found out about our placement 4 days before the event. Jake told me the way you tell someone about a logistics update. quietly, without editorializing. "We're at table 9, near the east side." His face was careful. I looked up table 9 when we arrived. East side meant the corridor side. It meant near the door that led to the kitchen staging area. It meant not near the windows where his parents sat at table 1 with the mayor's deputy director, a federal judge, two of his father's largest commercial clients, and Dr. Patricia Chen, who I vaguely recognized as having something to do with state education, but whose precise role I could not recall at that moment. Jake noticed me noticing. He put his hand briefly at the small of my back and said nothing, which was more honest than most things people say in those situations. His mother greeted us at the entrance. She looked at my dress, a navy wrap dress I had chosen specifically because it was simple and appropriate and mine, not the pale green thing she had messaged me, a link to 2 weeks earlier with a note that it would photograph beautifully and suits the room. Her expression moved through something and settled back into warmth so smoothly that someone who did not know her would have missed it entirely. His father shook Jake's hand and gave him the particular clap on the shoulder that communicates both affection and disappointment in the same motion. He looked at me. "Good to have you, Nora." It was said the way you say something you have rehearsed being polite about. We sat at table 9. The carnations were fresh. The couple to our left were a contractor his father did occasional work with, and the contractor's wife, who asked me within 4 minutes what I did for work and then said, when I told her, "Oh, that is so sweet," before turning to speak to her husband. The chair to my right remained empty until just before dinner when a younger cousin of Jake's arrived slightly breathless and spent most of the meal on his phone. The toast came after the second course. His father stood at table 1 and the room quieted with the particular efficiency of people who are accustomed to being in rooms where powerful men stand and speak. He was good at this. He had the voice for it, unhurried, taking up the right amount of space, making the people listening feel chosen for the experience. He spoke about what 60 years meant. About the company, what it had taken to build it, what he hoped it would become. He spoke about his wife with genuine warmth, the kind that comes from decades of shared investment in a particular vision of life. He spoke about his daughter, the attorney, by name and in specific detail, her partnership track, a recent case she had won that apparently had regional significance, the way she had never once taken the easy route. The room responded with the warmth of people who had heard the story before and were happy to hear it again. Then his eyes moved across the room with the deliberateness of a man who has rehearsed this part. "Our Jake," he said, and there was a pause in that pause, the weight of something managed rather than felt, "has always done things his own way. The workshop." He smiled. "Still out there turning wood into furniture." He glanced at me with the practiced warmth of someone who has decided that inclusiveness is the cleanest option. And his girlfriend Nora, who works with young children, elementary school, very dedicated. He let it rest there, brief, not cruel in any way that could be named, just light. The kind of light that has the specific quality of absence. Then he raised his glass to the room and the room raised its glasses and I picked up my water because I had stopped drinking wine about an hour earlier, when I realized I needed to stay entirely clear. Jake set his glass down without drinking. I watched Dr. Patricia Chen across the room. She had been watching our table for the last few minutes with an expression I could not read from the distance. Attentive. The kind of stillness that comes from recognition working its way forward. She rose from her chair. She did not hurry. She crossed the room the way someone crosses a room when they have made a decision. Steady, unhesitating, and the conversations around her shifted slightly as people tracked the movement of the evening's most credentialed guest walking away from table 1 in the direction of table 9. She stopped at our table. She looked at Jake with an expression that was half certainty and half something softer. The look of someone unexpectedly finding a thing they had been trying to locate. She said his last name. "Calloway. I'd been looking at you for 10 minutes trying to decide if it was actually you." Jake stood. "Dr. Chen." She turned briefly to include the room, which had gone quieter than the music warranted. "I want to ask you something directly," she said to him. And her voice was conversational, but it carried, "because I have been trying to get 5 minutes with you for 8 months and your office keeps telling me you're in the field." His father was standing now. "Patricia, You know Jake? She looked at his father with the even patience of someone who has spent a career choosing words carefully. She said, Warren, I know Jake Calloway the same way I know anyone whose work is actively reshaping how rural school districts in this state function. She turned back to Jake. The Calloway Rural Learning Foundation. Your literacy initiative in the eastern counties. She paused for effect, not drama, just to let the information arrive correctly. 14 districts. 62,000 students. The state board just finished a review and we are restructuring the entire rural education grant model around what your foundation built. She looked at his father again. He's been doing this for 4 years. His foundation has committed over $30 million in program funding. I've been trying to get him on the governor's education task force for 2 cycles. He keeps declining. Jake said quietly, because I'm not useful in conference rooms. The work is in the schools. She looked at him with the particular exasperation of someone who respects the answer and finds it maddening anyway. Then she looked at me. And I believe that's where you come in. Millhaven Elementary. Your reading intervention data from last year was in the regional report our office reviewed. Your approach to early literacy with Title I students. She said it to the room without intending to perform it. The woman your family just described as someone who works with young children has one of the highest third-grade reading growth rates in the district. The room was quiet, in a way that rooms are quiet when they are recalibrating. His father opened his mouth. His father closed his mouth. Jake did not look at his father. He looked at the room and spoke at a volume that reached every table without being raised. I did not come here tonight to make anyone uncomfortable, he said. That is genuinely true. I came because Nora asked me to be here, and because she matters to me, and because she has spent 2 years coming to family events and being managed rather than known. He paused. I have never once been asked about my work by anyone in this family in any serious way. Not once. I was the hobby. She was the babysitter. He looked at his father directly. You have never asked my last name in a professional context. You have never asked Nora what her students are like or what the job actually costs her. You made a decision about what we were worth and arranged the room accordingly. He sat down. The silence held for a moment that felt longer than it was. I stood. My hands were steady. My voice was steadier than I expected it to be, which told me that what I was about to say had been waiting longer than I had admitted. I said, I have been careful with you. With all of you. I have used careful words and worn the right expressions and not made things difficult when things were difficult, because I thought that was what you needed from me to eventually see me clearly. I do not think that was the right strategy. Not because I regret being kind, but because careful slowly becomes invisible, and invisible is not the same as accepted. I looked at his mother, who was looking at her hands. I said, You called my job babysitting once. I let it go. I have let a lot of things go. I have students who come to school on Monday mornings carrying things I cannot name and will not put words to in this room. I stay. I show up and I stay and I try to make sure they feel like the room they are in has space for them. I am not sure everyone in this room can say the same about the rooms they run. I looked at Jake. I said, We're going to go. We walked out. 70 people watched. The string ensemble had stopped. No one said anything. The call from his sister came 2 days later. Her voice had a quality I had not heard in it before, stripped of its usual forward motion, like something had been subtracted from the usual construction of how she spoke. She said that things were complicated. She said their father had received a message from Dr. Chen the following morning, professional, brief, withdrawing her participation from a civic development advisory panel he chaired, citing what she described as a misalignment in values that had become something she could not overlook in good conscience. 2 of his business contacts had reached out within the week. One cited concerns about judgment. The other was less specific, but the effect was the same. His mother had been quietly removed from consideration for a foundation board position she had been expecting for most of the year. I should have said something, his sister told me. I knew how they treated you. It was easier not to. I believed her, and also understood that easier not to is a choice with a cost that gets distributed somewhere. What do you want from this? I asked her. I want them to be able to apologize, she said. I want you to let them. I asked the same question I had already been sitting with privately. Do they want to apologize? Or do they want the situation to resolve? She was quiet for longer than the question required. Then she said, both. I think both things are true right now, and I don't know which one will win out. But I think my mother has been sitting in her bedroom for 2 days, and that is not nothing. His mother called 4 days later. She asked if she could come to me, not if I would come to her, and the distinction registered. I said yes. We sat in my kitchen, and she was quiet for a while before she spoke. The kind of quiet that is not composure, but the thing that comes after composure breaks. She said, I have been thinking about the word I used. About your work. I have been thinking about why I used it. She stopped. I think I was afraid that Jake had found someone who was going to pull him further from what I thought I had built for him, and I made you into a symbol of that instead of a person. That is not something I can undo, but I want to say it plainly. That honesty cost her something. I could hear what it cost her. It did not fix anything, but it was real. I told her what I needed, not an apology in a room with flowers and everyone nodding. I needed his parents to sit across from me in the presence of a therapist, once a week for 8 weeks, and listen without defending. I needed the first session to be mine, fully mine, to describe what the last 2 years had felt like in language I had not softened. I needed the sessions to continue regardless of how uncomfortable they became. She agreed. She did not negotiate. The first session was the hardest thing I have done in a room that was not a classroom. I talked for almost an hour. I talked about the typed name card. I talked about the word babysitting and how I had let it pass because I thought deference was the path to being seen. I talked about what it does to a person to be present in a room and functionally absent and how that room operates. His father sat across from me with an expression I had never seen on him before. The specific look of a man encountering the weight of his own behavior, described by someone who had been carrying it without complaint. Some sessions we made something that felt like progress. Some sessions we just endured the room together, which the therapist told us in week 4 was not nothing. She was right. Jake and I drove home after that first session, and I sat in the passenger seat and did not speak for several minutes, and he did not try to fill it. I said, I think I'm going to be okay. He said, I know. His sister called me the following month. She said she had started seeing her own therapist, that she had been working on something she described as the difference between the family script and what she actually believed, and that she did not know yet where that process was going to take her, but that she thought it was the right direction. I told her I thought so too. I have been thinking lately about the thing I spent 2 years trying to do. I was trying to make my work legible to people who had already categorized it. I was translating myself into a language designed to make their comfort easier, and the translation was never going to be accurate enough because the category was already fixed before I opened my mouth. Jake never told his family about the foundation because it was not information he needed them to have. He was not hiding it from vanity or strategy. He was doing work that mattered on its own terms, and the work did not require an audience. That is a kind of freedom I had not seen up close before. The absence of the need to be measured. I have thought about the students I will go back to on Monday, the one who spent 3 weeks unable to get through a single paragraph without shutting down, who last Friday read 4 pages out loud without stopping and looked up with an expression I cannot describe except to say it was the face of someone discovering something they had not known was available to them. I was the only adult in that room. Nobody photographed it. It is not on a wall anywhere. That is the work. That is the whole work. I do not know yet exactly what the next year with his family will look like. The sessions continue. Some things are mending in ways that feel genuine. Some things are mending in ways that feel like performance, and I am watching carefully for the difference. I have stopped needing a guaranteed outcome. What I know is that I will not be translating myself anymore. I will be what I am, and what I am is a 3rd-grade teacher at a Title I school who has helped 62 children learn to read in the last 4 years, and who drove home from a very difficult room last Tuesday and felt, for the first time in a long time, like the window was open. Jake was at his workshop when I got home that evening, sanding the edge of a table he had been working on for 3 weeks. He looked up when I walked in. He did not ask how it went. He just moved over to make room on the bench beside him. I sat down. The workshop smelled like cedar. Outside, it was getting dark. I said, "I think it's gonna take a long time." He said, "Most things worth anything do." We sat there for a while without talking. The sanding resumed. I listened to the rhythm of it and thought about the Monday after, and the student who had read 4 pages out loud and the expression on her face when she stopped and realized what she had done. Let me ask you something before I go. Is there someone in your life you have already measured, already placed in a category, already decided the value of, before you actually looked? Not a stranger. Someone close. Someone you pass in the hallway of your own life every week and think you already understand. What would it cost you to look again?